deaths and toxic drug supply deaths right across the country.
Toxic drug supply. Let's go. Toxic drug supply.
Significant concern. I know.
Watch out for that
Minister,
toxic drug
Yara
supply.
Sachs,
That is a
our mental
Freudian
health and
slip.
addictions minister,
1,000,000%.
spoke to me.
That is a Freudian slip. He Freudian slipped. Toxic drug supply.
Yesterday, I believe, and we're going to be working with the tools we have at the federal level. I mentioned it to Doug as well, that I spoke with Neil this morning.
I mentioned it to Toxic Doug earlier before we started.
And there is work that the federal government can do to support the provinces as we move forward on more treatment and recovery centers, understanding that
he's got to be on like Adderall or something. Like that's what's happening. It reminds me of me.
This phenomenon of toxic drug supply is not just hitting our biggest cities, they're hitting small towns and communities across Ontario, right across the country. And it requires us to step up and respond, because these are tragedies that are hitting far too many families and communities that don't have.
He's got to be on Adderall. He's on some type of personality enhancing drug.
The resources available that are even, there in large cities to some degree. We need to keep being there for families suffering risks and loss this way. Doug?
Thank you.
What was that?
There in large cities to some degree. We need to keep being there for families suffering risks and loss this way.
He's fucked.
Thank you. Well, Minister Todd Smith is on the ground as we speak, and over the last few days in Belleville, and obviously our
see Doug,
our
no sleeves rolled up.
the families.
Election.
I always believe there's
election
a
down the road for
approach.
him.
One being we have to go after the source.
Slow
we
talker.
have to go after the drug dealers that are putting.
Main drug dealers in Belleville are likely probably connected to the Canadian military.
The fentanyl and opioids, and it's killing people. So we're working hand in hand with the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. We've put over $3.8 billion in. I've been a big proponent for
I've been a big proponent of drugs all my life. Big proponent.
Many years.
Drugs travel along the corridor and eventually find their way up north.
Where, from what corridor? Where exactly are they coming from? Trenton, maybe?
And unfortunately, sometimes into remote communities as well.
Oh, unfortunately, they end up in remote communities, as if that's not where they're trying to be going.
So one of the things that we have done, thanks to the leadership of the Premier, we have to meet people where they are, but we can't leave them there. We have to ensure that we provide them the supports and services.
He's literally saying this so that he can say, like, we're going to treat people with addiction, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to work while they're addicted.
That are necessary to bring them to the point where they can regain control of their lives. And we have to remember that addictions are not...
See, they want to make it so that, like, addiction is normalized instead of, like, treated as if it's a systemic issue, right? Like, they want to make it basically as, like, a lubricant for your own capital domination, which doesn't address the issue, right? It's just treating the symptom of the underlying problem. And Doug Ford's that Ontario Reaganism is this entirely. He doesn't want disabled people. He wants a strong workforce. That's his idea of progressive conservatism. It's like giving everybody all the resources they need so that they can lift themselves up through their own capital exploitation. That's Doug Ford.
Not only impacting on the individual, it's also impacting on the families. It's impacting on the community. It's impacting on our emergency rooms. It's impacting on our first responders.